Good evening and welcome to this Success at Sixth evening for the parents of students who've just joined the college. We're just, as sometimes happens, things are downloading slowly off the internet, so just bear with us while we get various presentations and the like up and running. So just to explain the format of the evening, this evening I've got Paul Wilson, who is the principal, who will start off and give a little bit of a welcome. And then following that, I will give some input on some of the work that we do with students about developing a growth mindset. My name is Andrew Jackson, and I'm one of the associate principals. Through the evening, we have got the a kind of question and answer box open on the side. So if there are any questions of a general nature, then feel free to ask those, and we will either pick those up as we go through the presentations as at an appropriate time, or we'll answer them towards the end. Obviously, if there are questions about individual students, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to answer them in this open forum, and the best thing to do is to pick those up really via students' personal progress mentors, or by emailing myself or Paul at the college after this evening. So it looks like Paul is up and running and ready.
Thank you, Andrew. Hopefully you can see the first slide there with my my welcome and two images of the college. As Andrew's just described, I'm Paul Wilson, principal, and very warm welcome from me also. I'm joining Andrew and doing a short introduction to the college, and look forward at some point to the opportunity to meet many of you in person. And obviously this is the way of our world at the moment, doing things online. First of all, I'm very biased, obviously, but WQE is a really special place and a very successful college, and I thought it would be most appropriate really to start with just a little headline of some of the things that hopefully your sons and daughters are going to experience in their time at WQE, and hopefully similar levels, if not better outcomes still. We're very much on a trajectory of improving the college outcomes from already very high levels. So as you can see from the slides there, virtually everybody passes their A levels with us. We have very high levels of performance in terms of grade profiles of that, and as you can see, 83% of students awarded the very highest grades, the A star to C grades that are most sought after and most important for getting our young people into the highest tariff universities and onto very successful futures, hopefully as young professionals, and that's very much what we're about as a college. So results are one thing, but we're about developing people. We're about getting them the prepared and ready for their progression into higher education in due course, if that's what they choose, and if not, into hopefully professional careers with training to pursue their ambitions and their goals that way. Some of our students join us without having achieved an English or maths, which is a really important passport qualification. As you can see, we're one of the strongest providers in the country at helping them convert previous performance from the lower grade English and maths through to the essential higher grade English and maths. And you can see from those figures on there, national averages are around 20% of students who have come out of year 11 that haven't achieved that. Colleges normally are able to convert in their time with those young people, so anything around sort of 20-25% of students, and you can see our percentages of that are 54 and 60% in English and maths respectively as well. So we're very strong in terms of getting effectively the package of qualifications, but also the profile of support for students to make their journey into the next steps beyond us, and that's a big deal for us. It's what we're really about, and we try to create a culture and an environment that's driven by that focus on success, but also that focus on personal development, support, and nurturing the ambitions that I know your sons and daughters will be arriving at the college with. So we're a big and diverse college, but we're chunked down into a number of different sections, particularly structured around our curriculum, and we try to build a very strong sense of community and respect for the the whole community that we have, and supporting our students to really take their place in wider society. And we're a perfect environment for that, really. And we're really committed that everybody will be challenged to be the very best that they can be. Some of the results that I've described there show that, and we're also very committed to supporting everybody such that nobody is left behind at all on their journey with us. That's just a headline, really, of what hopefully is to come, and what our ethos is all about.
We're getting a question just about just a little bit more explanation on what you mean by highest grades.
Yeah, so the highest grades on there, the 83% of the highest level grades there is the A star to C grades at A level. So the A levels are graded on a spectrum of A to E, being pass grades. So they're the top proportion of those grades, and generally they're the sort of grades that are required to go to the very selective universities and to the most competitive courses. And as you can see, the vast majority of our students get those grade profiles, and that's been something that we've been very successful at in year after year, consistently. Many of you will be obviously conscious of the times that we're in, and the importance of safety, and without going into too much detail, because I know we've communicated with parents and students fairly consistently from the start of term, and indeed before term, about some of the expectations we've got around trying to keep the college community safe. But we're reiterating these things to your sons and daughters all the time. We think it's very, very important that they are careful about attending college if feeling unwell, and it's important to take tests, and to make sure that they're confident that the testing is giving them the all clear to be in college if they're unwell. And we're also expecting them to do tests twice weekly on a Sunday and a Wednesday, and to keep that pattern going throughout the year. So we've had very, very high levels of take up and participation in that, and we're eager for that to continue, because that's probably our strongest control in terms of keeping the whole college community safe and well. Added to that is obviously our strong encouragement to our young people to consider the vaccination programs. And again, I spoke to a lot of our students over the first few weeks, and it seems that the vast majority have already had first vaccines, and some are even heading on and had their second. So we're encouraging that as a big part of our controls. Lots of communication in other places, certainly on our websites, and certainly if you're contacting the college, you've got any anxieties about those. We've got a COVID specific number, for example, if you're concerned about what to do if symptoms arise and things like that. So that's a key part of what we're doing as a college. I think probably the most significant thing I can say this evening is it's very different at college. And one of the things that's important for students is in the early weeks to begin to find a pattern and to begin to understand what the subtle differences are between college life and school life. And probably the most significant of those differences is that one of our jobs is to nurture and develop a greater level of independence, and develop the study skills that go alongside the classroom activities, so that students can develop much more beyond the classroom, rather than seeing this experience as just being delivered through a classroom. And that's it. Partly helped by the fact we have a timetable where they have study periods within that. They've got a pattern of a timetable that isn't all curriculum driven, and they've got to work out where are the opportunities to study, how to use their time. And Andrew will say more about this in his part of our presentation to you tonight. But getting their mindsets right, organising themselves well, and trying to get going early, because 37 weeks is the length of an academic year. We're already at week 3, and therefore that time will very, very quickly move. So there's a lot of excitement about being around college, and they're meeting lots of new people, and we're encouraging that. But it's also really important to get into some good early patterns, and to begin to work out how to use study time and free time productively and constructively. So Andrew will say more about that in due course. So that hopefully will provide the platform for us to be a stepping stone into much greater adult independence, into higher education and the professional careers that I've mentioned before, where your sons and daughters hopefully will be confident to be increasingly independent and skilled at managing their own workloads and their own patterns as they progress through. And that's one of the key things in partnership with parents that we constantly revisit where we can, because it's a supportive process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's one of those things where you have to start doing it to help young people begin to really experience that and learn by doing it, really. So we're always around, we're supporting that, and we create our environment in the college to try and promote that and encourage that and monitor that as well as we possibly can. It's also important to say that we have a very large number of students studying very specialist courses, and as a result we've got staff who are real specialists in what they do. They're very experienced specialist in teaching specifically A-level and level 3 qualifications, and because of our scale they can also have specialisms within that. So hopefully as we go through this process of the next few years with your sons and daughters, they'll build really strong relationships with those teachers, and they spend a lot of time with smaller numbers of staff than they would have done at school. So it's very important to get good strong relationships developing, and to basically bounce ideas off those staff, talk to them when there are difficulties, challenge themselves as well to ask the question that perhaps other people haven't been brave enough to ask, and teachers will really value and respect that, and we're encouraging that as well. Obviously what goes with specialist teachers and our large specialist departments is lots of very specialist facilities, particularly around the science, the sports, the arts. We've got entire blocks and buildings dedicated to those with specialist facilities in them. And within the first 3 weeks, your sons and daughters will be just scratching the surface of discovering those. So we're encouraging them to explore this week and next and so on. Much of what I've said is about helping our students to develop and to grow as people. Again, Andrew will say more about that. What I want to say about it is that just because they're older doesn't mean it's time for you to step off. And hopefully the reason you're here tonight is to hear about how you will work with the college and what your opportunities are to engage with us. And we take that very, very seriously. And I have a view that actually it's even more important probably than in earlier stages of schooling, because ultimately we're trying to give them greater responsibility for that, and the learning process means they won't always get it right. So without spoon feeding everything, we've got to be there ready to ask the questions, ready to support, ready to put students back on the right track, or to discuss how things are going. And the key here is that they're much more in control of that conversation, but it isn't a conversation they're having on their own. It should be with staff, it should be with parents, and they should be open to sharing for example, their attendance records with you, their performance data with you, how it's going, and we would encourage you to be asking those questions all of the time. We've got a leadership team of the people on this slide here, and of which I'm a part. There are 2 people you'll see on that slide who are in the role of students and welfare, that are our specialists around safeguarding, support for students who are potentially finding difficulties, or potentially students who have got learning support needs or other health challenges that potentially present barriers to education, that we're able to help them overcome. And we provide an incredibly supportive environment with that. Well, Donna Trussler is just departing, in fact, in the next week or 2, on maternity leave, and Darren Winterton, who's a very experienced established member of staff at the college, is picking up the mantle from them. So at different points in that process, you might be in contact with Donna or Aaron in respect of those roles. And the rest of our senior team are very established and experienced senior leaders, and many of whom have been around in the college for some time as well. So we're an established team, can be contacted at any time, and we'd encourage you to contact us if you've got significant concerns that can't be dealt with through perhaps the more informal channels of personal progress mentors and your son or daughter working through those discussions with those staff themselves. So there's a couple of email addresses on that slide, so hopefully I've spent long enough and there you've got an opportunity to write those down, but obviously we'll share the details of those anyway with you, and if you call the college you can be put in touch with one of those 2 people or directly to ourselves. Study is a big part of what we're doing. Obviously, there's the talk program, and students typically have got a program that will amount to sort of around 16, 17, 18 hours, depending on the type of formal program that they've worked on. The rest of the working week, we obviously are encouraging them to use their time around enrichment, their personal development time, and as the year progresses, increasingly around the independent study that will come with those courses that they've got. And conceptually, we talk about the concept of a core day, where we don't expect students to arrive for the sake of it in the morning and just get in really early and sit and wait for things to happen later in their day, although they're very welcome to do that. And equally, we don't expect them to stay once all of their lessons are finished at the end of the day, but we stay open quite late as a college, and the facilities are available for our students to use. They're welcome to go home and use their time productively at home, but within the envelope of their start in the morning, of their first lesson through to their final lesson of the day, we expect them to be using that time constructively for study and activity within the college, and try to organise themselves to use those facilities. And that's an important thing to talk to your sons and daughters about, because that's the best way to get productive time from what they're working with in their course areas, and we recognise that they'll do quite a lot at home, so arriving late if they don't have a lesson is okay. Leaving early is also okay if they don't have a lesson. Everything else must be attended, and using the time productively in college is the key with that. And for the avoidance of doubt, they have a timetable. They can share that with you if they haven't already done that, and you can ask them to show you copies of that. They've got all of those digitally and can share that with you also. And the key is to get the balance right between social activity, personal development activity, enrichments, and wider skill development, as well as the formal academic work that goes with their lessons. I've largely said most of the things that matter on this slide. Be there for everything on the timetable, be within the college for everything in the gaps in between, and talk to us. Encourage your sons and daughters to communicate directly about any concerns that might affect attendance, and make sure we're aware of reasons for attendance. And we one of the greatest frustrations students have is they get so far into a year and they start applying for things in the future, and then they're concerned that their academic records around attendance are not up to date because they haven't necessarily shared reasons and context of things, and that's quite important to do that systematically right from the beginning, because it's harder for us to update those retrospectively and to keep doing that. And we understand people are unwell, particularly at the moment. There are reasons why students sometimes can't be in college and need to be at home, and we've got very established systems for that. But communication is the key, and the reference on this slide to PPM is what we call a personal progress mentor, and I referred to them there as being king. They are your point of contact. Every student in the college has a personal progress mentor of their own. They're their contact in the daytime. They're your contact. They're available throughout the day, and they're a team of people, so they work as a team if one of them just happens to not be available, and they can respond to calls if you need to get in touch and talk to a member of staff during a day at any point, really, and we'll respond to that, and try to communicate with you, and address any concerns that you might have about what's happening in college. And so that's your key contact. And your sons and daughters will know who that person is. Just ask them for the name of your PPM, and if they don't know it or they don't tell you that, then our receptionists will be able to give you that name as well if you call them, and they can get the record up and share that information with you and put you in touch. So that's some of the key things, really, that we would expect of our students. Ultimately, attending is the single biggest indicator that will determine the likely grades of our students. We analyse that year after year. Those who attend best perform best, and that's not a great surprise, but actually the correlation is very, very tight and strong. And if I say to you that typically A-level grade boundaries are 10% apart, that would suggest that 90% attendance might result in the borderline of potentially being a grade lower in courses than perhaps students ought to be. And students often think 90% is wonderful, but it potentially is on the boundary of risking grades if it drops much below that, really. We've got systems to help compensate for that, but there's nothing really like being in lessons, particularly in the sort of levels of courses that your sons and daughters will be on now, where actually discussion with others, debate, consideration of lots of different perspectives of things actually requires group activity, and it's quite an important part of college life. We've got a range of commitments that we will be sharing with your sons and daughters, and some of those are listed on here. We've got a document called WQE Commitment and our Student Charter, which we display through our website and through our WQE Online portal with your sons and daughters. But it's very much about the things I've been describing, supporting the induction process, making sure the quality of teaching and learning is really high, and that we're responsive to individuals, and that we create a really positive, safe, supportive developmental environment for our young people, and that they're the key, really, to us being the college that we are, and a college that we're very proud to be. You'll see on there communication and partnerships that support development, and that's the bit that's really referring to parents. It's also referring to other agencies like universities. We'll be throughout the academic process be putting your sons and daughters in touch with other partners that can help add value to their education and their personal development, and so we work quite hard on those partnerships as well. Student life is a massive part of the next two years before potentially progressing on to careers and higher education of their choice. In many ways, qualifications get you into jobs and into universities, but the thing that ultimately determines people's success in the future, as I'm sure as parents and adults it's the relationships and the skills and the way in which people interact with others that will ultimately determine the course of people's careers and the success within those careers. And as I've described before, we're a very large college. We've got huge opportunities to support students to do the things they're into, but also to explore the things they haven't quite explored yet in terms of opportunities and new things that might help them develop skills and experience that will be incredibly valuable later in their careers. And if nothing else, being in a college environment of several thousand 16 to 19s, all of similar age, who've chosen similar courses with similar types of ambitions and aspirations, is a great opportunity, really, for them to develop those personal skills and interactive skills with others. So we really encourage them to get involved in not just the academic things, but the wider aspects of student life as well, for those reasons, and they're so very important. And we on this slide, I've really summarised some of the things that are what the college is all about. We work really hard at encouraging a sense of community and participating really positively and respectfully within a college community, and to really reach out into the wider communities beyond the college as well, and to take the opportunities that exist to develop skills, as I've just described, and experiences. We encourage our students to be really curious in the learning process, to ask the difficult questions, to participate extensively in the wider aspects of college life and development. Their commitment to do their very best, their commitment to talk to us when perhaps things aren't going as well, or to challenge themselves and be ambitious, are aspects of that experience that we hope they'll be part of. And we're very confident actually in every cohort, but especially the start that this cohort have made, that this is going to be a really positive, strong, ambitious community that's going to challenge themselves and spark off each other, really, and to really gain the benefits of doing that. We create a community that's really considerate of others. It's an incredibly broad and diverse community. One of the things I say to our students, for example, in terms of that diversity, is they're going to be the leaders of tomorrow, the managers and leaders. When they're in their professional careers in later life, they will have to be good at dealing with people from every background in society, from every profile that you could imagine will be the sorts of people that will be their employees and their teams or their work colleagues in the future. And that's exactly what they have the opportunity to experience and develop in a college like WQE. So developing an awareness and understanding of others, perhaps being confident to go beyond just the safe conversations and discussions with the people they know and are most confident with, and branching out is what we're encouraging them to do. So there's some of the things that we'll be prioritising with your sons and daughters over the next couple of years. So that's really all by way of an introduction from me, and I know Andrew's going to pick things up from here and talk more about what we're going to do to help students really settle and develop their mindsets and take some of those things on further. So over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to share my screen. I've been typing away and answering a few of the questions in the question and answer session as other things have been going through. I'm going to obviously stop doing that now. Paul may pick up some of them, and we may well get some answers to that as we go through what I'm going to talk to you about now. And beyond that, we will then pick those up at the end of this evening. So. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us. What I'm going to do is to talk to you about one thing that we talk to students about a great deal, and I'm just having to play the fun game of moving things around on Zoom so I can actually see the bit that I need to see on the screen. So one of the things that we talk to students about is how they can develop a growth mindset. So a mindset that helps them sort of meet the challenges that they have at college with a real commitment, and to do that as part of our college community. So what I'm going to do is to talk through with you some of the things that we will share with students, so that you've got that information, so you can, if you wish, use the same sort of language and talk about the same sorts of things with students at home. And just to say that this evening is being recorded, so you will be able to listen back if you wish, and also we will make versions of the presentations available as well online, so that you've got those to refer to. So Paul's talked a little bit about this transition from school to college. We believe it's a real time of opportunity and growth. Undoubtedly, it can have its challenges, but we hope that those are being met in a supportive community with sort of care from all of the staff at WQE. One of the things that we do talk through with students is actually, how will it feel? How will their emotions change as they go through their first year with us? We encourage them to be curious about that, to actually not just accept that things will happen, but to try and think about them in advance, with the hope that, and expectation in our experience also, is that if students are aware of those sorts of possible situations that they may feel, and as they go through the year, then it will come as less of a surprise to them, and they've got a language to actually talk about that as things go through. So here goes. So we talked to them about this this graph. So that they may have started off with some shock. I'll explain what these different words mean in a few moments. Then they may go into kind of a rejection phase, and then through denial, blaming others, some anxiety. They may experience what is described as an emotional fog, where everything feels a bit grey and they're not quite sure where to go with it. And then we expect and experience with the support of the college, and as students find their feet, that they will come out the other side of that and accept things and experiment and get into a lovely phrase, a getting on with it phase. I guess this is an important thing for students to be aware of, and not just for their starting point at WQE, but also as they go on through, I think, the rest of life. This is something that is likely to be a repeating pattern, and so it's something that we want to talk to students about. So you may be experiencing a teenager at home who's doing some of these things. If you want to really annoy them, you can say, oh yes, I can see that at the moment you're in your rejection phase, and they will likely stomp out of the room and not speak to you for a little while. So I'll leave that one with you as to whether or not you take that up. So it can be, I don't want to take any advice. I'm just going to get on with it. I'm going to carry on as normal, go through that rejection phase. There may be a little bit of denial. Everything's absolutely fine. Just leave me alone. Occasionally, we do get a bit of anger. It's all terrible. It's all rubbish. I wish I'd never gone there or done anything or chosen these subjects. And obviously, if a student is in that situation, that's not a place where we'd want them to stay for very long, and they really should be talking to their personal progress mentor about that, so that we can help them. Occasionally, students will end up with a kind of, well, it's just that I'm just not good enough, clever enough to do this. And plainly, the students are, otherwise they wouldn't be on the course and have got the grade they've got from their previous studies. And so our job is to say, hang in there. Yes, you are. It's okay not to understand everything straight away or not to be there yet. And the whole point of study is to learn things. If students get into an anxious state, obviously it's really important that you let us know and they actually are aware of that and actually speak to somebody about it so that we can give them some help and support. Occasionally we get that emotional fog. We like to keep an eye on that and make sure that that doesn't happen for too long. And then we like to see students getting out the other side and getting to grips with it. So we will talk through that with students so that they're, it doesn't come as a shock to them and they may recognise some of those things as they go through. So we do use this sort of language with students in terms of how can they get unstuck. Again, we challenge them, perhaps, when they're not in the middle of experiencing it, to actually think about it so that when they do, they've got a language to use. And this, again, might be a language that you want to use at home. So really unlikely. Something concrete. What 3 things could you do to improve? Really rubbish at this? Not good at it yet. What steps can you take to improve? It's the sort of thing that we'd ask. Paul, could you are you still alive or could you mute yourself? Because I think I can hear you madly typing in the background.
You may be able to, Andrew. Apologies. I'll mute.
Yeah, thank you. So sometimes we have situations where students just deny that everybody else is doing extra work and we'd like to challenge them over that. One of our favourite things that students say to us, well, it's not really a favourite, is, oh, it's all right. I'm not going to revise for any practice exams and things like that, because what I want to do is to see how I get on without doing any revision at all, and then I will kind of work from there. Generally not a good idea. So we would say, yes, please revise from the start. So too much work. It's all about being organised. How can we help you break it down? No one told me there was homework. Again, help with organisation, and that's something that it's really helpful for you to do at home as well. If you're particularly in the early days, just a bit of gentle, how's it going? What work have you got this week? When are you planning to do it? How are you getting yourself organised so that it doesn't all build up? Are really, really helpful things to do. So the kind of it's boring, too hard, not what I expected. We really encourage conversation. with teaching staff about that, and actually try and work that through with students. Not sure how to study or revise. Our personal progress mentors will cover revision and different ways of doing it as part of their sessions, alongside kind of different learning styles and different ways that people like to approach things, so that revision can be done and subjects can be accessed in various ways. Yeah, and back to I'm just seeing how well I do without any effort before I really try. Excellent, but no is really our response to that. Very occasionally there will be an absolute genius who gets away with that, but it's 1 in every 500 students. So communication is key. We will communicate with students via their student email. Personal progress mentors will be working with students to make sure that they've got those set up on their phone so that the emails come straight through. And so again, if you're able to check that they've got that set up at home, that's a really, really helpful thing. There are displays around the college, lots of information on WQ Online, on the website, up to the college's Twitter feed. Pro Portal is our system where when teachers put in marks and information about students, those appear on Pro Portal, and both the student and you as parents can sit down with the student and look at things together. So that looks at things like their attendance levels, various key marks that allow you to judge kind of how they're getting on and their progress. Some more on that in a little while. One of the key things I think that we tend to do is a move towards signposting, putting students in control and in charge rather than telling students what to do. At the start, there'll be more telling. As students move through their time with us, then we will move towards more signposting, because we think by the time that students finish with us, whether that's after 2, 3, 4, or sometimes even 5 years, that what they're moving on to next is likely to be a world of signposting rather than telling, and so we like to prepare them for that. So this is my most worrying slide, in that I don't like really to tell you what your job is, because you've been doing it for quite some time. We really, really value your partnership in this and want you to be part of the WQ community. I think we do try and tend to work sort of through the student first, and so it's possible that you may feel a little bit further removed. As Paul said, please do get in touch with personal progress mentors if you've got any concerns whatsoever. Students know the names of those, so ask them. As Paul said, reception will be able to give you the name if that's not forthcoming from students, and most PPMs will, once definitely all the students have kind of started at college and the groups are settled, they will send a welcome email to parents of carers for all the emails that we've got, so that you've got that contact detail. Talk a little bit about Pro Portal. So we'd really encourage you to sit down with students, check that they can log into that, which is something that personal progress mentors will have gone through with students, so that as different, as we call them, progress points come up, where key information is put in by your staff about progress in subjects, you'll be able to look at that with students alongside their levels of attendance. And we'll keep saying it, personal progress mentor, in the shorthand of WQE, PPM is what students refer to them as. Feel free to contact them. There's also a parent carer section of the website, which has a copy of the parent carer handbook on it, and some of the key information that you will find helpful. Another thing that we talk through with students, so this is an actual activity that we do with students as part of their personal progress mentor sessions, is say to them that, it's basically, this is in their control. There isn't a predestined outcome for them. They have agency, ability to meet the challenges, to be committed, and to do really, really well in their subjects. So we say, 8 students all started maths, and by the end of their first year, there are some who have really flown, some who found it a little bit more difficult, and we need to give some support to. But what we're trying to say to the students is what we want them to be is working towards being in that A, B, possibly, no area, and, putting things in place that allow them to do that. We will talk through with them, again, in terms of growth mindset, some things you can change, some things you can't. So maximize the changes that you can make, and I guess in the nicest possible way, just live with the fact that you can't always change everything, and there are things that you can, in terms of thinking about it, that will help. So we'd say maximize and think about those things that you can influence. I'm slightly aware of the time, so I'm not going to dwell too much on these slides. I'm going to whiz through them so that we have time for answering questions at the end. So keeping on track, reviewing progress. Quite a few questions about this in the question and answer when I was looking at it. So we calculate minimum expected grades for the students. We set those with a level of challenge and aspiration. So there's a nationally agreed sort of kind of set of calculations that say if you've got roughly this profile in your GCSEs, for example, for A-levels and level 3 vocationals, these are the sorts of grades that you'd expect to get. And what we then do is to add half a grade onto those so that the target is aspirational. And that isn't us saying that's the maximum we think you can get. That is our minimum expected grade. So you'll hear students talk about MEGs, you'll hear and that's what that's talking about. That's the minimum grade that the college is expecting from them. So make the expected progress from your prior performance plus half a grade. So quite often students are really ambitious, and we wouldn't want them to, as part of the discussion of, no, this isn't the ceiling, it's the floor, if you like, and we discuss with students what grade they're aiming for. We have progress points which are regular through the student's course, where we collect assessment grades and we indicate whether students are on track to meet or exceed their minimum expected grades. All the dates for those are on the back cover of the Parent Carer Handbook, and there's a copy of that in the Parent Carer section of the college website. So we encourage, again, as I said before, to look at those together via Pro Portal, and we usually send out an overview to parent carers by email directly as well, as long as we've got an up-to-date email address for you. And then as a follow-up to that, there's targeted action planning through discussion to keep the student going and to make changes where that needs to happen. I love this slide. One of the things that we would want to really share with students is that just the massive benefits of having a growth mindset, of taking setbacks as opportunities to grow, to really believing that you can actually learn to do anything that you want, and taking feedback as constructive and moving on, looking at those around and being inspired by them. And college is a real time for trying new things. So independent study time. We really encourage students to take the challenge of having time when they're not in lessons and using that productively and well. So early on, we ask students these things: how much time are they going to be spending studying outside lessons? There are various options. We ask them what do we think is a reasonable amount of time. From the college's point of view, we think that the amount of time that you spend reviewing, preparing, doing set work for a subject should be the same amount of time out of class as you're spending in class. So to give you an example, for an A-level, students have 4 70-minute lessons. So that's getting on for, well, sometimes between sort of 4.5 and 5 hours of time. And so we'd be expecting to spend about that amount of independent study time. So we share with them some survey work that we did with students about what sort of range of time outside lessons that students are spending on study. Around about 25%, 26% are doing 12 hours per week or more. This isn't really a serious slide, but sometimes students will joke with us, all right, can I pay for my grades then? And obviously we do not accept bribes. It's not on, but there is a currency that they have access to that they can use in effect to gain better grades, and that is simply time. There's a strong correlation between the amount of time spent actually working on subjects and the grades that students get, and that goes alongside Paul's really strong correlation of being in college and going to your lessons really helps. So this is again one of my favorite slides. So you may well recognize this person in your house. So do you have somebody who always just leaves with a very small, very stylish, but basically not very helpful bag for college? Or you may have somebody who likes to store all of their possessions in their bag, just stuffed in there. And occasionally they'll empty it all out on the floor, look for their homework mixed in amongst, an empty crisp packet, and they will hope that everything is going to be okay. Or you may have somebody who loves to keep all their work together and basically just keeps on piling up all their college work, often with the subjects mixed in together, just in date order from when it happened. We suggest to students none of those approaches are sensible. They aren't going to work. So obviously, we then try to move on and say that the really sensible way to approach this is to either using a physical folder, have something that you bring to college, split up for the different subjects, and then on a regular basis, maybe once a week, take stuff out of that and file it away in separate files for the different subjects. Increasing numbers of students work online and do things digitally, which is absolutely fantastic. OneNote is a fantastic resource and basically is the online version of the split up into bits folder at the top. So again, something that would be really helpful for you to do at home would be, towards the end of the week, check how things are going, look out for really small bags, stuff or just crumpled in a corner, or a massive folder that's growing, and suggest they might like to think about doing it differently. So that goes through that. None of that is rocket science, but you'd be surprised how many students just need a little bit of help and support with that. We will talk to students about it in college. If you're able to back that up at home, that would be absolutely fantastic. A few questions in the Q&A about progression. What we try and say to students is some students know exactly what they want to do, but many don't. And what we'd say is be curious about the options and things that you don't know yet. So areas of interest, think about what you enjoy, consider a range of possibilities, accept that there can be more than one way to reach a goal. I think probably virtually everybody, as they kind of get a little bit older in life, will realise that actually I was aiming for this and I was expecting it to go that way. And what happened was I might have got to that same place in the end, but I quite often went by a slightly different route. So we just talk that through with students. And for many students, part of our job, particularly early on in their courses, is to say to them, it's fine, it's normal not to know exactly what the plan is, and then point them back towards areas of interest. What do you enjoy? Look at the range of possibilities. So there are some questions around what are the different progression routes that students take. So we have around about 75 to 80% of our students who progress on to higher education. Quite a number do further education, particularly foundation degrees, often if they want to convert into engineering or have a desire to do further study, particularly in the creative arts, where quite often a foundation year of portfolio building is what happens after level 3 study. We have a good number who go directly into employment. Under normal circumstances, we have quite a few who do gap years. Plainly, that's been somewhat limited during the COVID era. And we have increasing numbers heading towards apprenticeships and higher degree apprenticeships as an excellent alternative to higher education. In terms of support that students get, a large part of the end of their first year of level 3 study in their personal progress mentor sessions is all about getting ready for the next steps, thinking it through, and we have a whole day dedicated to different progression routes, and including support for getting set up with applying to university through the UCAS process and writing personal statements. And then that support continues through into the autumn term of their second year of level 3 study, and depending on what students are heading towards, then we have different people who can help out with that. And we have somebody called our Young Professional Development Coordinator who works with students both around employability skills and also with students who are particular high achievers who might need some extra help and support with personal statement writing and getting ready for interviews at Russell Group, Oxford, Cambridge, sort of medicine applications. Paul's talked a little bit about support systems, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much. And then I'm going to finish with about 6 minutes to go till past. That we'll take questions of a general nature. This is what we say to students. We're not telling you it's going to be easy, but we're going to tell you that it's worth it. And we'd really encourage them to meet the challenges with curiosity, commitment, and be as part of a considerate community. We want to work on this together and support students to make brilliant progress with us so that they're ready for what comes next. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing and we will try and go through the Q&A that people still have. So I just need to come out of my point. So Paul, have you got any things that you want to point us towards to start with?
Hi, Andrew. A recurring theme seems to be a quite a common question around what students do if they are considering changing a course. Is it possible? What's the route to that and consider that?
Yeah. So do you want me to cover that? So there is so there's a process which is actually happening at the moment. So students have had that explained to them as part of their personal progress mentor group sessions last week. There's an online form that they fill in. We obviously can't promise that we will be able to accommodate all changes. There are quite a number of courses that are pretty full, and it would be likely that it would need somebody to be coming out of that course before somebody else could go in. And there are also quite a number of students who are on waiting lists because they wish to do those courses, but they were full, and we will seek to put them in first. So yeah, process that's happening at the moment, which is a request, but really from our point of view, we will accommodate what we can, but we can't guarantee that we will be able to do that for everybody.
Yeah, and another one that's been quite common tonight is how do parents access information, for example, about attendance, performance, parents' evenings, reports, and those sorts of things. So I've done a few written responses, but perhaps for those that I haven't got to yet in the responses, but you might want to pick up some of those themes, Andrew.
Yep. So Pro Portal is the key vehicle for that. So that is an online system which students have access to. Personal progress mentors will explain to them how to log on, and we would really encourage you to sit down and to look at that with students online. At our progress points, we will also email a kind of a summary of where students are in terms of their grades and where we think they're doing in terms of their progress. So those are the main two ways. Parents' evenings do come up through the year. We will email details of those well in advance, and also on the back of the Parent Carer Handbook, which we sent an email out about that with a link to where it is on the college website, but it's in the Parent Carer section of the college website. And on the back of that are key dates for when all the progress points happen, and also when parents' evenings take place as well.
Okay, and a couple of questions actually about accessing things like Pro Portal. I think I put in one of the earlier written replies that we really encourage students to lead those processes and take ownership of that sort of data and that information. It's part of their growing up process. That doesn't mean we approve them not sharing it with you, and that you should have that very direct conversation with them. So it's their Pro Portal, it's their information, and we very much encourage them to share that with you at request at any time. It's there, you can see it. It'll be a live picture of their current position. If you're having any difficulties with them being willing to share that with you, then probably the next port of call is with a PPM, and we'll pick up that issue, because actually it's probably more an issue about the way they're viewing this next step, really, and the maturity and responsibility we're giving them. And we'd actually quite like to tackle that and talk to them about that in any case, and to support you in getting the information you want that way. So again, a number of parents have asked that question. Okay, so some more Pro Portal questions there. A number of questions about careers and support for careers pathways. I know you've said a number of things along the way on that. We've got an extensive careers team, and very big set of networks and partnerships around careers. And at certain points in the year, we run quite large events, sometimes online, and back in a previous era, we ran them all live in person, and perhaps at some point in the near future we'll be able to revisit that. But they've actually been very successful on a virtual basis. Because the college is so large, we generally get the very big players and the big organisations that you might want to be talking to coming to those events, and so they're usually well attended by specialist visitors and speakers. So more information will come out, obviously at various points in the process, particularly obviously in the build up towards the university application rounds, which generally start in the process leading up to the end of the first year and into the beginning of the second year.
It's probably also worth saying that the careers team, rather than sending out like one email one day, one email the next day, that often gets lost in amongst students' other college emails, they are typically in the habit of sending out a careers update once every week to students with all the opportunities that are coming up, both in the next week and over the next half term. So yeah, once students have settled, those things will start to happen. And so yeah, really encourage students to look out for that, and sensible conversation around the kitchen table or wherever you happen to be at home is, have you had a look at what's in the careers email this week? And as Paul said, there will be loads going on.
There's a few questions around enrichment and some of the wider opportunities. One specific question around that is, can students choose more than one enrichment? The likelihood is that that's going to be more difficult, but not impossible. We don't encourage that always, but and generally capacity is likely to work against that.
Do you want me to answer that one, Paul, in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, you could do, but I was just going to say, as part of that, enrichment courses are only one part of that wider development, and you know, what we actually encourage students to do is set up their own societies, organise themselves into groups. As our student services centres will provide support for that, and that's very much part of the process that they'll experience going into universities and higher education. As a really large college, they'll find people that are into the stuff that they're into, and if they actually go into student services and ask the question, could you help me find people like me with interests like me, it'll be relatively straightforward to set up a student-led society of their own. That might be around you know, a particular charity or issues that they want to develop. We've had societies set up around accessing medical school and organising their own speakers and events for that. So it can be a very broad base of things. It can simply just be a fun activity that they want to get involved with other students around that have a similar interest too. So there's lots of ways in which students can broaden that enrichment offer beyond just the formal enrichment choices, which we obviously have a certain capacity for and generally allocate through the enrolment process.
Yeah, I think the other subtlety with the enrichments is that we understand that there are a lot of students who have diverse and broad interests. So yeah, as Paul said, there's space for one enrichment on their timetable. We understand that quite often students would like to represent the college at sport or in performing arts, and so if that's a particular interest, it's worth the student mentioning that to their PPM, because those tend to be the places where there's the opportunity to both do an enrichment that's as part of your timetable, as well as representing the college in some way in another sphere.
Yeah, and there's a specific question here about students that are perhaps not engaging with or attending their particular enrichment, and I think the first port of call is a discussion with PPMs on that, because it's one of the best opportunities to meet other students and get involved with other students, and certainly experience would suggest that they make friends for life doing those things, really. So it's certainly something to work on and encourage them to be a part of, and we expect it actually. So it's better off to be on the front foot early and have the conversation with PPM on those things, because we'll likely follow it up anyway ourselves later.
Yeah,
so that's it.
I think that sometimes comes with an element of challenge. I think we gave students three choices in terms of their enrichment, and we would have tried to place them in one of those choices. We would really encourage students to actually give it a go, get their feet under the table before they decide they're not quite sure about it as well. So there's that delicate balance between wanting it to be something that the students are enjoying and getting involved with, but equally not keeping chopping and changing.
There's a really great question here as well around trips and visits, which of course have been slightly off the agenda for 18 months. I sign off our risk assessments in respect of these things, and I can tell you already they've started to happen. So we've started to do those things, obviously with suitable controls and a little bit more attention to the detail about what COVID risks might exist on trips and events. But we're definitely going ahead and trying to organise those things now. We see it as a really big and important part of college life. So we're hopeful that if circumstances continue to support us with that, that will become a normal part of college life again, and we very much encourage them to take part in those things. I'm just skimming through for other questions and themes, really, we haven't picked up already. Questions about the presentation being available. I think Andrew, you referred to.
We'll
recording.
make sure there's we'll put a PDF version with things uncovered and available onto the parent carer section of the website, and also there's usually a link to a recording of this evening as well, so you can come back to that.
Yeah, question there about do timetables stay the same all year? The answer to that is a relatively straightforward one. Probably. There are obviously circumstances where a timetable might change if students change an option, or if sometimes we will reorganise a group to play to certain specialisms at certain points in the year. But generally that will happen at the same times and be done as a coordinated process for that. But on the whole, timetables will stay the same for the year once they're set up. And so that should, and we've reached a fairly settled point now in respect of that. So that should be now rolling through fairly normally and consistently at this point now, unless they're making changes to timetables. Okay.
Right, I'm just scanning through. There's one that says, do enrichments count towards university access? Mostly the answer to that is no. There's one exception to that, which is an enrichment course that students can take in the second year of their level 3 study with us, and that's the extended project qualification, or EPQ, which is highly valued by universities. Sometimes it will result in them including the EPQ UCAS points in the offer, or sometimes it will result in students being given a lower offer because they've done EPQ, or it tends to be also really supportive for a number of colleges just in terms of demonstrating exactly the sorts of skills that are required for good university study. So that tends to be the only one that counts towards university access.
And there's question here around will the college let parents know if there are additional support needs for students, and that also links to questions about some of the specific support needs that some students might have. I referred to two senior leaders in my presentation, Donna Trussler and Aaron Winterton, who lead our students and welfare functions. In the college, there are bases for students to talk to staff about those things, and once there's an engagement with students about those, teachers will sometimes refer students into those services, or contact those staff directly to pick up things where they've got some concerns, and where that's the case, we'll work that through with individuals and engage with parents through that process at that point. If there's a known difficulty or need early on in this, or you're experiencing some challenges, then again you can contact the college and ask for the welfare and skills team, and they'll talk you through the processes and support that we've got available for those things as well. The welfare and skills team got quite a large and diverse and specialist team around those areas as well. Okay.
I'm doing the exciting thing of trying to read, type, and speak at the same time now.
I'm doing similar. Okay. And I mean, it might be we'll reach a suitable point actually where we've dealt with the common themes here, and we're just beginning to respond to them.
So.
Yeah, there's a question there about do things happen after school time. Generally speaking, our enrichments and events will happen within the college working day. Sometimes trips and visits and specialist external events will happen outside of the college day. So on the whole, we generally work from 9 o'clock in the morning till 10 past 4. I think there was a question earlier around whether our facilities open longer than that, and yes, they are. Students can access the building from 8:30 in the morning through to 4:30 in the evening, in the afternoon. If there's specific study space required, or if there's a reason why they can't be picked up or organise things, then again talk to us about that, and we can accommodate those needs as well. Okay. Yeah, I think we're probably going to be better served now picking these through individually. Some of them are quite personalised questions now around individual students. So
yeah, I think we've covered most things. Question around will parents' evenings be online? That's one of the things I think we've we've found that it seems to have worked pretty well for people to be able to access things online. So yes, we will be planning to run those online, but for any parents, carers who've got issues with trying to access things from home, we will have facilities in the college so that people can come in and access things that way.
It's quite a question here around certain enrichment options that we may or may not have within the offer. And again, I'll just refer back to that students can set up any society actually, and we'll try and support that process. So if there's something that they want to do that we haven't set up, firstly ask the question, because we may have staff that could support that, and there may be an interest group in it. But more significantly, student-led societies can be supported as well to develop those things.
Yeah. So I think scanning through, I think we look to have covered most of the general themes. There are some that are sort of, as you're saying, Paul, are getting towards sort of individual questions about individual students. The best thing I would say is to contact the student's personal progress mentor, their PPM, to try and investigate that further. And as I think we've described, the ways in which you can find out who the student's PPM is, and the easiest one is to ask them, and they will tell you their name.
That's certainly the case, and if they don't, then you'll find it on their timetable. So if you ask them for their timetable, the PPM session's on there, the name is on there. If you need to email them, the standard format for college email addresses is firstname.surname@weqe.ac.uk as well. So if you know the name, you'll probably be able to email them. Failing all of that, our receptionists will be very happy to help and to support you. They can give you that information directly. So don't leave it very long before you work through those. If the student themselves isn't able to furnish you with that information, you can get it directly from receptionists. Okay. It's been great to have so many people in the event as well. Thank you for joining us, and by all means, at any stage, contact us. Hopefully you've taken away how to contact the college and some of the different channels that you might route queries through. So please, take the spirit of what I described of this partnership, three-way partnership, and work with us over the coming years to make sure we get really good outcomes for your sons and daughters along the way. And we'll try and be as responsive as we possibly can to those queries as they come in. And we hope it all goes well. And we hope to hear some really good success stories like the ones I started the presentation off with tonight. So good luck, and keep in touch with us.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, and good evening.